Pastor Gary Loadholdt, thank you so much for joining me this morning. Just want to talk to you a little bit about the South Carolina Lutheran Retreat Center's Building, Renewing, Believing Holy Spaces campaign and the involvement that Redeemer Lutheran Church has had in that. Before we get started, can you tell me a little bit about your first experience with the South Carolina Lutheran Retreat Centers, whether as an individual or through the congregation of Redeemer Lutheran Church?
Well, I can tell you my father was a pastor in this synod, and so I've really been around Camp Conard about as far back as I can remember. But some of my strongest early remembrances are from my high school years and the early days of LCY, when I would attend and sometimes even staff some of the youth conferences and retreats there. I grew both in attending them and in leading them. And I think the other thing is I formed relationships there that have lasted through the years. When I first came here to Redeemer, we were going to Camp Conard for council retreats. And in the years since, we consistently send our youth members over there to Camp Conard for youth retreats and conferences and different kinds of ministries that happen there. I also kind of have some connection to Coastal as well. My extended family actually has a family reunion over Labor Day every year at Coastal. So we're sometimes there as well.
Yeah, always a joy having you here and seeing you at Camp Conard for different things. What do you think would be the South Carolina Lutheran Retreat Center's greatest asset that we have to offer to congregations like Redeemer Lutheran Church?
I think about going to one of the sites with adults. There's something powerful about being in a different location, it seems to me. You can do a council retreat at your home church, but there's a focus and an intentionality when you go off to a different place. And for youth and adults both, going off together for a retreat or an experience seems to me to build such strong bonds of community and relationship. And even more, sometimes I think when you're taken out of your everyday environment, sometimes your eyes and your heart are opened in new ways to see and encounter God.
Yeah, we talked a lot as a staff about the power that community has, not only here offering places where people can come to gather together, but strengthening the ministries that go on in local congregation settings as well. Does the ministry of the South Carolina Lutheran Retreat Centers parallel or strengthen any of the ongoing ministries currently happening at Redeemer?
Oh gosh, yes. Or it's hard to even know where to begin with that one. Yeah. We marvel at the growth when we send our youth particularly off to an event there and how they come back changed. We have some members here who take strong leadership roles in events like Camp Hug, and even have had young people who through the experience like that at Camp Conard have redirected where they wanted to spend their careers as they grow up. And changed it into helping children with disabilities and special needs. One of our members here was the founder, I guess I should say, of Camp Chemo, which met at Camp Conard for years and years and years. It first started meeting in her house and then was able to go to Camp Conard. And what a gift that was. And unfortunately now Camp Chemo has outgrown Camp Conard, but it has meant so much to that. And by the way, the second director of Camp Chemo was also a member here. So it has been a strong connection to this congregation, using Camp Conard in particular, because it's much closer for us. But it's helped our members and this congregation, I think, to engage in outreach to our community and to, in some ways, to care for those in need. I think it's powerful ministry that has planted some seeds for other outreach and commitment to outreach here in our church as well. Sometimes you need a place where the dream can happen. And I think that's what Camp Conard has often offered for us.
Exactly. Yeah, one of my favorite parts of being on staff with the South Carolina Lutheran Retreat Centers is hearing stories just like that, where what happens during just a few days on retreat can have these ripple effects once people leave our spaces and go home back to their regular communities. So yeah, so such powerful stories. That's incredible. So shifting gears a little bit, talking about our current Building, Renewing, Believing, we're calling it our Holy Spaces campaign. When you hear the term Holy Spaces, what does that draw to mind? What do you think of when you hear that phrase?
Well, maybe what I just said. It's a place where the dream can happen. I'm doing a Bible study on Genesis right now, and we're just dealing with Joseph, and we call him the dreamer because he had these dreams and of his brothers bowing down to him, and the dreams over and over seemed dead, but then God brings it to reality. And I think when I think of holy spaces, God's dream for who we are called to be, and our dream for how God can work through us comes together in places like that. When I think a holy place is a place where you sense the presence of God, and maybe like Moses, it's you think about taking off your shoes. It's a place where you're changed and where you're charged.
Yeah, and then in places like Coastal Retreat here, where you've got the beach, it's the perfect setting. Just take off your shoes and be present. Yeah. Yeah. Tell me a little bit more about how Redeemer became first involved with the Building, Renewing, Believing Holy Spaces campaign.
Well, actually, the co-chairs of your campaign, Earl and Linda Wells, happen to be members of this congregation. And so we were early on encouraged and led. Linda and Earl came and presented to our church council, and the council eagerly embraced a vigorous response to this campaign, which kind of surprises me. Not that they're unsupportive of Camp Conard or Coastal Retreat, South Carolina Lutheran Retreat Centers, but it's just, these are tough times with the pandemic and all kind of things, and they were very eager to support this campaign.
Well, good. Yeah, so we're eager as well for all the things that we have in store for the future of Camp Conard's ministry. I know Linda and Earl Wells have shared a lot with Redeemer, talking about building a new chapel at Camp Conard, updated the entranceway, and as well as building a new pool, which we're really excited. We had a meeting yesterday with the campaign committee, and they talked about the final DHEC approval process being near the end and getting ready to break ground. So we're really excited that has been moving along, and I'm excited to hear about Redeemer's excitement as well. So it's always great when there's that mutual excitement with so many wonderful things going on. Was there anything unexpected that happened when you were talking to the members of Redeemer about building the future ministry of Camp Conard, or supporting SCLRC's ministry?
Well, yes, and I've kind of referred to it already. We got this kind of eager response even in the middle of a pandemic. Yeah, I'm not even sure at the time. I guess we were back worshiping together, but you might think of people would have had other concerns on their minds, and yet still this was that important to the people of this congregation. It's kind of amazing.
Yeah, it is really exciting. We talked about how we're kind of planting seeds for the not only the next generation, but future generations beyond that. So I think exciting is a great way to kind of encapsulate all that. As far as other congregations who are maybe on the fence of becoming involved in the Building, Renewing, Believing Holy Spaces campaign, what sort of message would you pass along to them, to those other congregations right now, based on your involvement at Redeemer?
Well, Elliot, you put in my mind that many years ago, my wife was leading an Alzheimer's support group. And when that time came to an end, the Alzheimer's support group gave her a little silver bowl, and engraved inside was simply the phrase, "You made a difference." And I think that's what Camp Conard and Coastal Retreat Center together do. They make a difference.
Yeah, like I said, I couldn't have said any better. So Pastor Gary, thank you so much for taking some time out of your busy day to sit down with us and to share some about your involvement at the Lutheran Retreat Centers at Camp Counter and Coastal Retreat, and as well as Redeemer's involvement in the Building, Renewing, Believing Holy Spaces campaign. We thank you so much for sharing part of your story.
Sure.